Before we kind of roll along, I want everybody to realize that there's a whole Q&A. If you're on the Zoom interface, there's a whole Q&A section. I don't really have visibility to the LinkedIn Live question box, but Kate does. So Kate is behind that little Lingo port. Oh, there she is. Hi. Kate is hiding behind the little Lingo port logo when she's not on, and she'll address those. So if you have a question, my advice is always to write the question down right away in the UI, just so you're not thinking about it later. And so if you're like me, you forget the question, but that's me. Anyway, we're going to get started in a second, and thank you all for joining. We're going to talk today about strings, and we're going to cover software. And for a lot of people on the localization side, there's sort of this abstract knowledge about strings, and we're hoping to kind of fill that in a very minor way, but then we'll get into the whole process of handling rapid change in an agile development environment when you have lots of teams and lots of products, and that Genevieve is going to talk about that. So without further ado, let's go here, and let me introduce Genevieve. Genevieve is manager over at Avigilon. If you're ever walking by like a secure building and you see one of those little cameras, chances are good you'll see an Avigilon label on it also. Very much in the security building. There's a school out front of my house, and when I walk around, I see the little Avigilon label on the security section, security cameras. Anyway, little background here. I have a whole, Genevieve was kind enough to even give us a whole bio, so that's great. Genevieve graduated from the University of British Columbia. She happens to live all the way on the other side of Canada these days, with a Bachelor of Computer Science. Her career journey has been growing with Avigilon, which is a Motorola company, over the past 5 years. From localization co-op, she grew into a developer, to a senior developer, to a localization manager, which is where she is today. As her manager, the main responsibilities are setting the vision for the program and supporting her phenomenal team and the initiatives that benefit the organization. So they're involved with strategy, scalability, quality, all kinds of the metrics that really should be driving a lot of localization teams. Yeah, I also really like that Genevieve comes from a development background. So she's worked as a developer. She's worked on continuous localization workflow, onboarding tools, and all that kind of good stuff, QA infrastructure. Now, on the side that's really interesting, especially, is that she has a BFA in theater. And she writes that her experience in the theater has helped her hone her communication skills, creativity, and ability to think outside the box. I'm just going to add that my own son dual majored in philosophy and computer science. So it's really good to have that sort of liberal arts oriented training together with computer science in terms of one's own background and what one is used to. So I think that's super cool. All right.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm so excited to be here today. I've been looking forward to this webinar for a long time now. We've been working with you guys for a couple of years, and I'm so excited that I get to be with your great minds here today.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I'm just gonna give a little background so that everybody's kind of on equal footing, and then we'll go into the questions, and then Olivier is going to show something new that has to do with string management. So, all right, so first of all, there are some general problems that occur with strings, and when I say strings, I'm really talking about the user interfacing messages. They could just be a word like navigation on a menu, an error message that's verbose. There's all kinds of ways they come at you. but the problems are, I didn't list everything because it's a really long list, but these are some of the headliners. Embedded strings, that is, the developer has left the string within the code base such that a translator can't get at it. And it can't be continuously processed because it's in the code. It's a common error, although if you're a global organization, I like to think you see less and less in that. But it still happens. The way that it happens is somebody like is hurrying to get a commit together, and they just do it the fast way, thinking they're going to go back and fix it later, and they forget. So that's typically what happens. Ambiguity, and this is kind of tough because you know if everything is really groovy, maybe you have a Figma team, a designer team, and they say what all the strings are and all that, and they are saying what the source text is, but you still get source text that might have an ambiguous meaning or states things in a way that wasn't used before, so it could be confusing, especially after translation to the user. So it's a big deal. The other thing is that sometimes last minute developers have to add a string or an error message or something like that. And developer English, it's in quotes, but it's a known thing here that not everybody's English might be up to snuff for a product release. Um, there's the length of the string, expansion in different languages. If something is this long in English, it might be this long in German, etc. Concatenations, and this is a really more common problem. So it's very tempting for a developer to build a string in pieces. So like I have five, where five is a variable, red, where red is a variable, apples, apples with a parentheses around the S for pluralization. So you have a problem of uh, five, the descriptors and the adjectives being in English in front of the noun. You have the problem of pluralization. You have potentially the problem of gender. All of that when a string is concatenated. But that's how programmers are taught when they go to school and they have their first bunch of homework assignments. So that has to be unlearned. And it's a very convenient programming style. And there's some programming languages that really push that, like, Ruby, for instance, really sort of wants you to build your code in that kind of a way. File formatting, JavaScript is super common. YAML, both really have no defined way to handle a resource file. So like Java has a properties files that's really well defined. JavaScript, it could be JSON. Um, it's the Wild West. I mean, that's a euphemism, well, a colloquialism, but it really can be done any way that department, that group wants to do it. So that can be a problem if you're trying to automate things. ICU support, people get it right, people get it wrong. It's very helpful. And region-specific format can be really messed up if, let's say, somebody doesn't pass locale into some class that's displaying, I don't know, the temperature or a distance in imperial versus metric. So those are just a few of them. And really you have addresses, you have all kinds of things that can happen. So um, there's also so that's the nitty gritty kind of thing. It's the stuff that can bog the system, but there's also sort of the process oriented stuff, the overarching things. If you're in a localization department, sometimes you're the last one to know that you have a project coming. And now you're in a reactive mode where everybody's like, come on, come on, come on, come on. And you are behind by definition. And that means that localization is nobody's friend in the release process. So we don't like that. Um, those problems with the strings, if they're discovered later, especially after localization, that has a real impact on velocity and releases and the like. It's also like I joke, but it's really true. And the joke is that localization errors, about half of them end up being internationalization, by the way. But localization bugs kind of go into JIRA and then they die. I mean, sometimes they're resurrected 3 years later, right? So you kind of want to avoid that. You want to be able to be proactive in a way that you can get the developers to fix things. Um, Not all translations, I mean, if you're in the business, you know this, they don't all come back at the same time. And you don't necessarily want to wait for the Italian when you've got 8 other languages that are done. You want to be able to keep going. So that means you have to have everything really well synchronized. And if you make a small change, like some edit to a string, you don't want it to be a lot of work for, 3 words. So you want that to be all automated. So that's my big background. I'm going to just give an example, just, so people see what a string, I can't tell you how many times I talk to people like that are in the industry and they actually don't know what a string looks like. So just I thought I'd stick it in there for those of you rolling your eyes. Yeah, I know, but I want to make sure everybody's along. So this is just programmatically in JavaScript. I'm saying, hey, we're going to go get whatever this is, probably, let's say, out of a database or something like this. And the string is this one here. Notice it's in single quotes. It could be in double quotes, but the names are, and this is the first name and the second name, right? So what that looks like when it's output, the names are Peter and Jack. And we got name 1 is Peter and name 2 is Jack, pulled from somewhere else, right? So when it goes to Genevieve, um, if she was to open up the file, it would have a key. The key has a number. Sometimes the key is actually the string. Um, One of the things you don't want is to have 2 of the same key for different strings. Um, there's also an argument not to share strings, but that's up to you. Just because context can change things. But anyway, you don't want 2 strings with the same key, 2 different strings with the same key, because then you might not get the message. That's the correct one. But all right, so the names are name 1 and name 2. So that's what Genevieve would see and then send off for translation. You don't want that to be translated. You just want this to be translated. All right, that's the background. Now we go into more fun stuff and what you're here for. I get to ask Genevieve some questions. All right, Genevieve, please describe your team at Avigilon.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah. So the way I break it down is we have our wider team and we have our internal team. So our wider team really consists of everyone who helps support our program and plays a role in ensuring that our customers get a high quality localized product. And this includes so many stakeholders. You talked about engineering teams. That's definitely a team that helps us get to where we want to be. We have our global sales team that support us, and of course, vendors like you guys who facilitate our process, who give us the tools to facilitate our processes. And then there's our internal team, and this team is really the heart of our operations. I always describe us as small but mighty. So we operate as a team of 6, but we oversee the localization for a very, very large portfolio of products, services, and tools in up to 23 languages. So on our team, we have Luz, who has presented with you guys before. She's our localization software operations manager. We have Eduardo, our senior program manager. We have 2 localization developers, and we have a rotating co-op every 8 months as well. So and that co-op generally helps us with some localization development. So with such a small internal team, our focus tends to be more on automation and scalability, and of course, having a great time along the way. We have over 20 repositories that we localized on top of our documentation requirements. So we have to make sure that everything is streamlined and quick and efficient, and all of the team members are so amazing at making that happen.
All right, very good. On to the next question. There'll be a test afterwards, by the way. How does your team handle strings and their translation process?
Yeah, so I mean, strings are so important because they're going to be how our users understand our product. Um, and as you know, and as much as possible, we want to prevent bad strings. All the problems that you've described are problems that we've seen. I was having chills when you were talking about Ruby and concatenation. There are some very real cases like that in our day-to-day operations. So um, the first time that we set eyes on strings are in the design phase. And so localization our team gets added as reviewers in the Figma wireframe. So all of that cladding phase. So that's generally the first place where we'll see strings. And right now we have a pretty amazing initiative that Luz is leading that helps us, throw those wireframes into machine translation so that we can see where there's going to be some early layout issues. Like, are any of those components not friendly to our strings? So the best bug is a prevented bug. So design is where we see that. Then uh, development. So that's where the developers come in and write these strings. So if they're taken right out of the design wireframes, that's great because we've already seen them and provided feedback. But that's not always the case. Sometimes what we'll do is some bugs appear and now a new error message has to be written, and that never sees the light of day in the wireframes. So we see a lot of diverse strings. We do work very closely with our developers. I mentioned having lots of teams of developers. We try to really, spread the good word about best practices. And for that, we have members of our team who go in and evangelize about all of these things that you mentioned, like pluralization and all of those bugs that can be prevented at a certain stage. Then we see them then for translation. So we're able to see now, especially with I know I'm not going to beat Olivier to the punchline, but we see the strings as they come through in the string manager feature of localizer. So we see those, and then we send them off. And then the final iteration that they'll see is QA testing. So that'll be when our third party LSP will review the screenshots of the product that we send them and give us their review. Yeah, so that's how we handle the strings from start to finish.
All right, neat. Here we go. How does your team integrate with your localization mission with development teams? How many team? Well, we'll get to the second question, which is like, how many teams are you currently working with? But just tell maybe first how do you do that whole integration?
Yeah, so our localization teams are one of those interesting things in an organization because you never know where they're going to land. Sometimes they fall in marketing, sometimes they fall in UX. It's a weird thing to put under different types of leadership, and they tend to be very mobile teams depending on where their efforts are prioritized. So our team is specifically nested under engineering. So we report up to the software department. So we work really closely with our engineers. Yeah, and as for how many, we easily work with over 20 engineering teams. We're really privileged that in our organization, our engineers really care about the products that they're building. I mean, the products that we make are often the difference between, life and death situations, because they are critical security products. So when our localization team comes in and talks to them about our best practices and why localization matters, it's very easy for everyone at the table to understand that language matters in critical, 911 situations. Um, yeah, and we're also constantly acquiring new companies all the time. We were in acquisition several years ago now, but since then we've acquired several more companies. So we're continuously onboarding more engineering teams.
All right. Oh, I did my own error. I had a question on top of that and I already forgot it. We'll come back to it.
And I did an error too. I think I answered both of your questions rather than,
No, it's good.
but
It's good.
we're all
No,
good.
it's good. It's good. All right, super. All right. So, what are some of the challenges? Oh, this is what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you prefer being under engineering versus say marketing?
Um, yes, I think it provides us with, sort of really, um, a grassroots perspective. We have such high visibility onto what we're seeing. And, the way our localization program sort of evolved is, we were responsible for marketing, documentation, engineering, all of that. And what we've done now over the past few years is we've slowly transferred the marketing localization off to the marketing team. So now they have a dedicated localization manager, Clara. She's amazing. And we keep in touch. We keep in touch, and we keep an eye on all the things that come through. But this really helps. But being under engineering really gives us sort of the synergies that we need to to get in at the very beginning, so to speak.
Good, good. Okay. Can you tell me some challenges that you've had to overcome and how that happened? Any success stories?
Yeah. So I mean, I've said it. I think you've mentioned at the start of the presentation a whole different series of issues, and we've had them all: embedded strings, concatenation, pluralization, gender, all of that we've experienced. And so, um, one of the solutions that we've sort of put forward to that is having so many different is setting up a structure in which we have multiple quality gates. So I talked a little bit about them already, but with onboarding of engineering teams, we have a very rigorous process, and no engineering leaves without realizing the importance of localization and what they can do to make that better. I mentioned the wireframe review. That's another quality gate that we can that we support. When they're in the development phase themselves as well, everything that they do has to go through a pull request. So, they write their code, their feature is ready, the new strings are there, they need to do a pull request. And one of the things that we've done over the past few years has been basically adding ourselves as required reviewers on all of the different repositories that have strings. And that serves as another quality gate. And then finally, we got a chance to play around and use String Manager this week. And just this week, there was one string in one of our products that we saw in the instance of that product, and it was untranslated. We were in Hebrew. We were looking at right to left content, but we see that one of the very first strings, enter email or address name, wasn't translated, and you don't want that because that's the first thing that your user will see. And so we were like, okay, well, what's the status of this string? And with that, we were able to jump into LingoPort's string manager, and we can see like, oh, it was a recently changed string, so it's a new string that needs to be sent for a translation, and we were able to send it off right away because it's a high priority string. So I would say that having these, uh, you know, all of these are regular challenges that we overcome, and having those different quality gates is how we solve and prevent.
Very good. Very cool. Just for those of you who maybe don't deal with source code very much, there's two stages for developer. They write their code, they commit it. That's sort of the same thing as you working on a document and saving it. And then a pull request is when you're submitting it to your team for review and inclusion in the actual product. And so that's the critical stage at which, hey, it's time to, get this localization going. All right. But here we go. Um, Question 5. Okay, if you were to mentor somebody, okay, so you got somebody out of Middlebury, they're brand new in your organization, they're doing their summer internship, something like that. They're starting out in a new software localization support or even leadership role, working with developers. What would you advise them to focus on?
Yeah, so that I really like that question. I think mentorship is so important to prioritize, and especially if they're, starting to build their localization careers. And if, anyone is on this call and just started out and would like to have a virtual call with me, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn. But for mentorship and what I would advise to focus on, I mean, there's really two things. One is building relationships. So it is critical. You are going to be interacting with so many different stakeholders. You are going to be needing things from people at different times. It's so important to build those relationships to, um, you know, really set a strong groundwork so that people want to help you. Um, I think that's number one. Whether it's with your team, whether it's with different stakeholders at the organization, whether it's with your vendors, and at the end of the day, we're all humans doing this. I know AI is taking, uh, you know, uh, I know AI is coming in and giving us lots of tools that we didn't have access to before, but the human component is so important. So building relationships. And then the second is focusing on process. So if your process isn't good, then your product's not going to be good, or it's going to take, or you're going to see so much wasted effort in terms of getting that product finalized. So making sure that you have effective processes is key.
I'm writing some of that down. All right. Second part of that, is there anything from that point in your career that you can share that you learned from?
So like, are there
Like
any
when
mentors? It's
like when you were starting out,
Yeah.
is there any, sort of thing that was successful or painful lesson that you can share that you learned from back then?
Um, yeah, absolutely. So I think, you know, I think you learn best when you're committing mistakes, because then you learn why things are the way they are. So, there's definitely a few mistakes I've done in the past few years, and I think about, you know, a couple of things like, sending requests through without properly vetting what was in them, and in times it resulted in exorbitant expenses, or it resulted in translation work that needed to be redone. I think um, I think these mistakes that you make really give you an understanding of why you're doing the things you're doing. Um, and then with that, you have to surround yourself with people who are um, patient and willing to let you grow. So I've been very lucky with the team I've had since I've started, because everyone around me has really given me the tools to succeed.
Well, that's great. I'm just going to add that having spoken a lot with Luz and other members of your team, you've got a pretty cool team there. So that's really nice. Okay, great. All right. Now we get to put Olivier on the line a little bit. And then, if Genevieve, if as we're looking at something new, I'm going to ask for your opinion on some of this stuff. It sounds like Olivier showed it to you. It's really new in our product last week, so that's great. But anyway, Olivier, take it away. I'm going to stop sharing, and then you share your screen. Hold on.
Thank you, Adam.
Sure.
Let me know when you see my screen.
I see your screen.
Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some concepts that Adam mentioned in one of the slides with one embedded string in JavaScript and how that string was moved to a correct resource file. In Command Center, which is the localizer, um, uh, which is a way to show localizer and globalizer, which are two products of Port. What we do is we tend to onboard repositories. So repositories have branches. You see that it's the same repository here with two different branches. Those two repositories correspond to one that was not internationalized and is analyzed with globalizer. And you see that there are a lot of issues here. And then this was refactored in another branch in the same repository here. And now it's internationalized. And embedded strings in particular have been moved into resource files, and those resource files have been 99% translated. So let me show you what an embedded string, how that's viewed when you scan the code and it shows that you have embedded strings, meaning things that should not be in the code. When you go into the globalizer side of things for a repository, it's going to give you a certain number of aspects here, in particular embedded strings. What you can do from globalizer in Command Center is click that button. It says that there are 86 embedded strings in that repository in that branch. You click here and it's going to show you every one of the strings that are embedded, and only that, but where they are embedded. So for example, the string add to cart here is in this JavaScript file. And if you have access to the code yourself, you can click that button. Otherwise, you can send the developer a link to that exact location. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click here, and it's going to take me to the location in the code where you have an embedded string. This is an embedded string. It will always show as add to cart in the interface, whatever the locale has been chosen. If it's in French, it's still say add to cart. In Hebrew, Arabic, still add to cart. So this needs to be moved outside of the code into a resource file. So going back to Command Center here, we have this dark side branch, which is not internationalized. That's what we're showing. And this one, which is internationalized. So if I go to the globalizer page, there are no more embedded strings. It's 0 here. And now I'm going to go to the part of the code that shows the part of the application here that shows the strings that can be translated, have been translated, will be translated because they are in resource files now. So I'm going to go to the localizer side of things, which takes care of the automation between the repository, the translation side from your different vendors. So what you're seeing here is that there are two target locales. There are that many strings that have been put in resource files that are ready to be translated or have been translated. In particular here, you see that it's for French and German. It's nearly everything has been translated, but there are still 8 strings that need to be translated. So what are those 8 strings? In order to discover that, you're going to click on strings up here. And in terms of, you can search the different strings in a number of ways. One of the way is to say, what is about to be sent now? And those are the strings that are about to be sent now.
By the
If
way,
you
this
want
is
to
the
see,
new stuff. This is the new stuff that we're showing. This is the
yeah,
manager functionality. It's part of the product. All right.
If you want to see exactly where in the code that is located, again, in the same fashion as for the globalizer slide, you can click on the go to line in source code, and it will take you to the resource file. So I'm going to go on forbidden, for example, and it will show me exactly in this location, the error message was added and has not been translated yet. So this is a recent add, and it tells you exactly that it's in the string.json. So that is a typical file format for resources that can be translated, or strings that are now ready for translation. If I look at the type of strings that are to be sent here, those have not been translated. If I want to look at the strings we were looking at earlier, which was add to file, right? Or add to card, rather. This one right here. This one was before in a JavaScript as an embedded string. It has been moved from the JavaScript into the JSON file that we're just looking at. So by clicking here again, you will see that has been moved into that good resource file that's a JSON file. And now it is a good internationalized application with strings that can be sent for translation. So at that point, I can search for a certain item. Let's say that I want checkout. I wanted to see if checkout is anywhere in where things are about to be sent for translation. Those are here. And so let's say that this one is all in caps. Maybe you want somebody to review that. You just click this. Maybe you want to send this to the developer. You'll just say, copy this link address and send it to the developer and tell them, are you sure you want that in all caps? If it has been reviewed by somebody who is okay with this, then you just need to click this. It's just a quick way for you to kind of have a certain revision or review of the strings that are about to be sent. You can, if I were to just look at this here and only look at review recommended for things that are about to be sent, so to be sent and review recommended, you'd have those, right? Or search rather here and review recommended, sorry. So at this point, you can really see what is in the repository, only the strings that you want to be sent for translation. If you're happy with this, all you need to do in Localizer is click this button and it will be sent for translation. It will be returned automatically when the translation is done. And at that point, the strings that are returned automatically, they will make it back to the repository, provided all the checks that we have pass correctly. And so duplicate keys, bad encoding, parameters missing, bad ICU message format, translated ICU selectors, all of that. If any of them fail, it will be indicated here in translated errors. And you'll have the same thing as what you saw earlier on the globalizer side. You'll see exactly what the error is. If everything passes as here, the strings will be pushed back to the repository in a different locales. So if I go back here, you'll notice that we have different locales like German or French. And for the equivalent keys in the same string.json, but for French, we will have neurochirurgien and all of those guys translated. What that means is that when title 3 is referenced in English, it will be brain surgeon, and then when it's referenced with the locale of French, it will be Doid, neurochirurgien, the one day. That's it for the demo.
All right. Very good. All right. I need to start sharing my presentation again. Hold on. All right. This is the time when we move on to questions. We have one question already. Definitely it'd be nice to see a couple more. Kate, you can watch LinkedIn Live to see if there's anything there. Okay.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, first question for Geneviève. Did you have to advocate so localization could get its eyes on the strings from the Figma design phase? I imagine it wasn't always like that.
That's right, definitely. I find as a localization team, you always have to advocate to get into the right meetings, into the right places to get to see things early on. So yes, there was some like advocating work, basically what I did was connect with the lead of UX design. And whatever you do, I recommend people always build a case, to be like, hey, if we were here in the process instead of where we are at now, then we'd be able to, these are the benefits that you would see from having us in this part of the process. And with that, we collaborated with UX, and they put us as part of the process. Now, do we always see the Figma wireframe reviews? I think, there's some auditing work that we still need to do to make sure that we're seeing all of the right Figmas. But I'm hopeful that, now that they've integrated as part of their process, and the UX designers are really good, that they include us in those wireframes. So yes, there was some advocating work, and I recommend going to whoever is, at the top of that UX hierarchy, to to get yourselves in early.
Are you, I should have asked this ahead of time. Are you using Localizer's Figma plugin?
Yeah, so we are using the Figma plugin, and there's this really it's great. We love it. And one of the things that we pushed for the localizer plugin that you guys implemented, and I just want to plug it here, is one of the things that we wanted to give developers was the ability to see what the longest string would look like in every language. But rather than providing them, 10 sets of Figma slides that are with all the different languages, we can just present them with one set of slides that has the longest string in each language. So you might see, in English, where you had, I am a Star Wars droid, and then the names of the different droids. Then in you if the longest sentence for I am a Star Wars droid is in French, then it would display in French. If the longest name for the named droid underneath is in German, then that portion will show up in German. So it's a very cool feature. It's been so helpful to us. Yeah, so we've definitely been using that, so that we can really highlight where there's going to be layout issues, because it's so much easier to fix them once they're in the UX processes, where they can, fix the component, rather than in 7 languages later on, when the material's already been tested.
All right. Are you just machine translating those in the design phase?
Yeah, in the design so in the design phase, we use machine translation, and that's because we just need something quick for them to see. It won't catch all the bugs, because obviously the language will be a little bit different when we send for translation. Because
Right.
our products are critical in nature, we stand by a human translation for all of the software strings.
All right.
So the translations will differ a little bit, but this is just to get an early temperature check on whether the components accommodate the strings.
I really like your description here, especially the use of the longest string. We've seen people just using pseudo localization to do that. I think it's way cooler to use the actual language, but why did you make that decision to go with the longest string?
Yeah, well, one thing that I've been seeing as a whole across the localization industry is we previously had metrics that, where they're like, oh, imagine that your string is going to be 30% longer than a string in English. And that might be helpful in some cases, but it's definitely not a helpful metric in other cases. I think of the word, live, the English word live, like live recording, live video, which is 4 characters in English. If you were like accommodate for 30% more, you would accommodate 1 additional character. But that same word in Russian is 25 characters. So that metric is not one that I would use for
Mhm,
for consistent quality. And
mhm.
so connecting directly to the translations of the languages that we're supporting, that will give us this like the strongest sense as opposed to an arbitrary, this it's going to be this many characters longer or this much percent longer.
Very good answer. That's cool. For those of you who don't know, pseudo localization adds a pad character around the English string, maybe a few Unicode characters plus a kind of like a beginning bracket and an end bracket, so you know where the beginning and end is. Um, I would say that for QA functional testing, pseudo localization can be particularly useful because the tester doesn't have to speak the target language to understand where they are and all that stuff. They'll see the English string, say if English is the source language, um, then they'll be able to see that and navigate through the interface. Um, there's if you're interested, there's stuff on if you go into the blog on lingoport.com and type in pseudo localization, that's PS. Um, then you'll see lots of articles on that. But anyway, that's just another sort of thing. Okay, we have the next question. How do you get context screenshots for translators?
Great, great question. So for us, I mentioned our team has some engineers. So we have localization developers, and what we do is we have basically testing infrastructure that navigates through our product and gets the screen grabs. So this is, we have developers writing these scripts, but at the end of the day, they're automated scripts that we can run. And every release we need to add a few scripts, tweak a few things, but it takes pictures and like that. You don't need someone who's changing the language 23 times and working off of snipping or green shot or something like that. We really prioritize automation and running scripts, and we have two engineers right now. Well, three engineers that I'm going to plug in. Rootwig, Kaya, and Ivy are all doing this kind of work on our team, and it is great because one of the problems that we see with testing is, we can send our LSP, our products uh, for manual testing, but the problem with that is that um, our environments are changing all the time. Our camera requirements are for different setups, for different features. So we really need things that we can do quickly and where there's not going to be human error along the way. So that's why we've automated that, and that's why we prioritize screenshot testing over manual testing.
I will throw in a plug that we have within the Localizer family of products. We have a way to automatically collect it's not really a screenshot. It's like a rendering, so it's actually a lot more portable. Um, it's a difference in the load on your IT team and all that, but it captures that rendering of the screen, but also associates the string that you're working on with that rendering. Now, not every TMS supports that. Not every vendor can deal with that, but many of them, most of them can. As a comment in the string, or they can, some TMSs, it's really good. Like you have the image up and you just move from string to string, and it's really cool. So that is there. There's also on the other side, on the linguistic review, the ability to run the application and actually you see a string in a screen, you don't like it, you can click on it and suggest what you want it to be. And once that suggestion is accepted, it actually rewrites into the file. So you don't need a developer to update the string. You don't need to say, come to a developer and say, hey, here's the list. And when you get around to it, please update it. It's just done. So that capability is there. I'm gonna say, hey, I have like one more question, but I'm gonna add because I can. Well, this is from an old friend, Julian. But I'm gonna just slip in one thing for String Manager. That now that you've seen it, like, how would you use it?
Oh my God, we've already been using it. So we just got
Oh,
that upgrade this week and we absolutely love it. It has made our lives so much simpler. One of the ways that we've used it is being able to find and identify the strings that we've so just like Olivier was doing, we were searching for specific strings, we were able to find them. The other thing that we can do is, in a situation where if your developers need to be the ones to change the string, like in our case, we tend to find ourselves the owners of the translated files, but for the English files, we want our developers to be making the fixes to the strings that they've committed. If they've committed, it's beneficial for them, they will learn that. So one of the things that Aditi showcased was the ability to go directly to the repo. And if you go directly to the repo, then it's just one more click to click the blame button in GitHub to find out who committed that string. So yeah, you know who you're gonna talk to and be like, did you listen to our best practices presentation? Um, um, so no, it's been really wonderful to use so far, and our whole team has been excited about it. We have a group chat for our team, and I've been seeing different members of my team praise the use of it because it's especially on some repos where there may be harder traceability to find those strings. This has come in really handy.
all right, great, great. No comment on that blame button. That's pretty funny. Uh, I think this is gonna be our last question, and then we'll wrap up in time for within. I always think we're gonna get this done in 45 minutes, and we always do it long. But all right, this is from our friend Julian, who we haven't heard from in a while. I'll bug you afterwards. Um, when you acquire non-I18N companies or products, what is your process to integrate them into your portfolio? And he gives the examples of redesign, string externalization, dev training, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so there's um, there's a few things there. So it's sort of, you know, like everything, it's a trade-off in terms of budget and resources. So, when we acquire companies, the state of localization can be extremely different per setup. You might have uh, people who did it complete internationalized, did it completely right from the start, but those are often very few and far between. Um, so so the initial step for us is setting up a meeting, getting a sense of what the product is, getting a sense of what they've done so far, and then that's where we come in and say, oh, this is like, you know, oh, their files aren't even extracted. Well, the first thing is going to be extracting those files, or they've extracted these files, but their quality standard of translation has been plugging it into Google Translate and forgetting about it promptly. So in that case, we'll be like, oh well, we need to send this for review to our for our LSP service, and they need to they need to file a bunch of bugs to let us know what's wrong. Um, so so the first process is building that relationship, making a connection with the team. The second is an assessment: where are we at and what needs to happen. And then we always, the idea is that we want to do things right from this point on as well. So that's when we evangelize our best practices to the developers, and then we have a whole series of requirements that we put each team through that is on the more technical side. So, give us commit access to your repository, make us automated reviewers for your pull requests, and so on and so forth. So that's largely what our process um, that's largely what our process looks like. And then, we treat the new acquisition team that we're working in as one of our stakeholders, because, we can, every step of the process, we can be like, this is what we're doing. This is how it improves it. What are your thoughts on this so far? Because they're essentially, we treat them as a client of ours because that's what they are.
All right, I'm just gonna put in a plug for Milan, who runs our services team. We're currently running two large-scale hey, that's cool. Two large-scale internationalization projects where we're doing the heavy lifting of internationalization. See, even I have trouble saying it. Internationalizing large-scale products, and then a third where the company's got a whole mess of products, but not a really good set of guidelines for their developers, and we're providing that, as well as some cleanup for poorly internationalized and translated applications as well. I mean, the problem is that nobody's got developers sitting on their hands, and they, with nothing to do, and everybody's got their functional roadmaps. So sometimes it's helpful to bring in, the teams that Lingoport has. We're more known for our software, but actually we've been in the consulting business for 18, and so that's how the company was founded. And that's kind of what bankrolled the company early on. But anyway, Jean-Pierre, what a pleasure. Really fun to work with you. And then your answers to the questions were just great. And if anybody wants to talk more, you've got my personal email there. And if you've got a question for Olivier or for Geneviève, you can go through me, or as Geneviève said, you can go through her LinkedIn account. You're going to get lots of connection requests now, Geneviève.
That's great. I love it. The localization is just a big community, and
Yeah,
it's great. It's
yeah,
always great to build those connections. And thank you guys so much for
right.
having me on today. Honestly, you guys have made our lives so much easier. Your support is always
Awesome.
outstanding, and some of the things that you mentioned, like we've seen, obviously we are using a big portion of your products, but also there some of the things that you mentioned, the demos are so cool. So I encourage anyone here today to go take a look at that stuff, because it is very cool what you guys are doing.
Yeah, well, Kate has been putting together a YouTube channel for Lingoport. Not everything is on there, but there's a lot on there, a lot of past webinars and the like.
And this webinar
Thank
will
you,
be as
Olivier, for
well.
the great demo. Kate does
Mhm.
all our logistics, and you get all the email from her. Thank you. And to everyone participating, thanks for hanging on the whole hour. All right, take
Bye-bye.
care.